Well, hey guys, welcome back to the shop. Got a 125M, kind of a special bike. A lot of people, kind of collect this one. It's we're not going to use that R word, rare. It's made for 2 years. It's really no rarer than a lot of others, but it's very unique in that it doesn't share a lot of the same parts, and I think that's what makes this bike special. It's got some neat features. If you've never seen one before, this is a 125M, but it's the second generation. They actually use that name, if you will, 125M, for two different bikes. One had a horizontal engine, and then this has an actual vertical engine. It's much like in design the 185S. This is a 1986. They made this bike. I think 85 and 86 was the second generation. What makes this bike special is it doesn't share any of the parts from the other bikes. Normally you could go to, say, a 185S and the motor's almost exactly the same as a 200. The seats interchange between a couple of different models. The tanks interchange between a couple of different models. The 200, the 200S, the 200E. There's certain similarities that Honda used throughout the entire line of 200cc engines, or leading up to the 200cc engine. This is a 125. This is the only, I don't think this engine is offered in a motorcycle. If that's not true, let me know, because I'd be interested to know what bike had this engine. What's special about this is it's chain drive and it has reverse. Think about that for a minute. Think back to the 80s. The 83 Big Red was chain drive high and low, no reverse. The 84 was shaft driven, had reverse high and low. 84 is still my favorite. But this is chain drive with reverse, and up until you get to a four-wheeler, this is the only chain drive driven three-wheeler with reverse. A lot of people referred to this as a baby Big Red because it has so many of the similarities, not parts, but the concepts, as a Big Red. This bike has electric start like a Big Red. This bike has reverse like a Big Red. And you have pull rope backup. This bike is unique. It's the only bike that runs this tank. That makes this tank very, very valuable. If I told you that I spent 3 times as much on the tank as I did the entire rest of the bike, that's how sought after that tank is. It has a couple of unique features. We're going to take it apart. This bike, what's wrong with it? Could be a will it run. I'm not going to call it a will it run because I already know what's wrong with it. The rear comes off like a 200X. If you think about that, they come off as a 200X or a 350X or a 250R. The fenders and the seat are all together in one piece. It has a rear trunk and a lot like a 250SX or a 200S. So you can see that Honda was really trying with a lot of different things. There are some holdovers. The way the electronics saddle the frame here, a lot like the first gen 125M, the 110, the toolbox location. You've got a battery located back here. Much like the Big Red, it's turned in parallel with the frame. It's not turned sideways, it's in like this. This is a rigid bike, front and rear, which for an 86 was pretty much unheard of. By this time, 83, 84, just about everything, 83 being the 185S and the 200 ATC, everything was running a front suspension. This bike is rigid front end. It really is, I think, and this is just my opinion, is that this was marketed to a family. You would get a bike this size. It is a little bit smaller. It probably, in relation to the other bikes, this would be the same platform as a 185S or a 200 ATC. These are 22-inch tall tires on here. They look big, but they're 22s. They just look big because the bike is a little bit smaller. If I rolled a 25 out here, which would be the standard size for a Big Red, you'd see how much it dwarfs it. It's a good size bike for a young kid, a young small teen possibly. It's got just enough power to have a lot of fun on it, but not get carried away. It has the same control set up. You have your same reverse button here. You push this in, pull a lever, it pulls the secondary cable. it goes down to a reverse, just like the Big Red. So because of all those similarities, people called this a baby red or a baby Big Red. And so what we have here, the reason it's in the shop today, or at least getting looked at today, is because I have some egg on my face. We went riding the other weekend, and this is my daughter's bike. I gave it to her. She liked it, and so it's hers until she decides that she likes something else, and then we'll just upgrade her, and then we'll part with this one. We've done that since go-karts and scooters. When she outgrows it, we'll upgrade. But this one's been sitting in the shop probably 6 months, and it hasn't been ridden. And I brought it out 2 days ago and rode it, and it rode fine. In the morning of our ride, I went to bring it out and warm it up, and it would not start. And for no reason that I can think of, it would not start. So I figure what better opportunity is we can do a will it run right here in the shop. I'll take you through a non-start condition on this bike. It's the same as a lot of others, and so you'll find the similarities. If you have an electric start bike, by all means use it. It definitely cuts down on the pulling and the yanking on the cord. You turn the key, neutral light comes on here. It's in neutral, so you just hit the button. Choke here. Nothing. Fuel is on, I can smell it. I can see it in the fuel filter. If you listen, you can hear the starter. But what you don't hear is the pop sound of ignition. You don't hear that pop, 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 trying to start. Listening to an engine, whether it be a lawnmower or a four-wheeler or whatever it is just as important as what you can see. If you don't hear ignition, then that's when you need to stop and you need to find out why. Check the easy stuff first. We see here that we have a fuel filter in place. We check our fuel filter. We know the fuel's not old. We just kind of bump it a little bit and you can kind of see it shaking in there. So we know we've got fuel coming out of the tank. We don't know if we have fuel going in the tank. If you come to this side, look on the bottom of your carburetor, you see this flat screw here? We crack this open. This is a bleeder or drain. Open this up, you see the fuel dripping out. Okay, now to turn it back. So what do we know? We know that we have fuel to here, but it's still not starting. So the next thing you're going to want to do is you're going to want to pull your spark plug. I've went over this many times, but it's always worth a refresher. So the first thing you want to do is you want to pull your cap. We're going to check for spark. There's no point taking a bike apart. You know, if there's easy things to check for. And I think spark is the easiest thing to check for. It's one of the easiest things to get to. So I always check it first. I know this bike is in good running condition because I rode it a week ago. All right, plug looks good. It's a little dirty, but not bad. So we're going to insert our plug back into our plug wire. We're going to ground it out here on the head. All right. Good old Honda didn't let us down. So now we know we have spark. We know that this engine's not blowed up or anything because we know the history on it. And so that goes a long way. It's turning over. If you weren't familiar with this bike, it's turning over. It's turning over smoothly. It's not making any clinking or clacking noises. I'll tell you the story on this bike. I actually bought it. I didn't know what it was. I had no idea. I had never seen a 125M before, and it was actually sitting next to a 200S. And the gentleman had it and a parts bike. And I negotiated a deal for all three, except it didn't have a tank. And little did I know that tank was going to take me almost a year to find. Now, I could have found one really quick, but it would have cost me twice as much. So finding a tank that I could afford took me quite a while. So this bike sat dormant for a little while. I scavenged another tank on it, and you may see that in other older videos. So at this point, now that we've established that we have fuel going into the carburetor, we have spark at the spark plug. That is the spark plug that's working. The The next thing is we need to find out why the fuel is not being pulled into the engine. We know that really at this point, it's going to be carburation. On this particular model, you do have a cable operated choke. So you're going to need a Phillips screwdriver. There's a little bolt or a little screw right in here. And it captures the top of the cable. You don't need to take the screw all the way off, you just want to loosen it up. These are two 10mm bolts, and that is consistent throughout. Man, I think all of the three-wheelers are held on with two 10mm bolts. And there's our carburetor. So our cable here is just a little detent, just like a brake cable. Pull it around, it slides right out. It's got a little barrel on the end of it. And that's all there is to it. Now, a couple things to keep in mind. Try to keep your carburetor level. If you start turning this around, you're going to take a bath. Remember, there's fuel in the bowl. There's also a gasket on the engine side of the carburetor. It's a little rubber O-ring. I got a little bowl here. I'm seeing little bits of metal. And what that is there's little pieces of metal that got past the filter and got into the carburetor. And with three-wheelers, this is all too common. I've even seen, if you're not, and really, if you look at that tank, it looks great. And it does not need lining. It looks too good. But it could have a little pocket of rust way in the back. And it's very common, those tanks, they have these little nooks and crannies to them. And rust builds up back there, and you can't see it, and you can't clean it out. There's really not a lot you can do with addressing it on a small scale. You've got two options. You can run multiple filters, which is what I'll do to this bike, or you could have the tank cleaned and lined. Another reason to keep your carburetor vertical is so you can catch what's in the bowl and you can see what's in the bowl. And one thing, I think this fuel may be a little bit older than I thought it was, because I'm not seeing, I really expected to see a lot of trash in here. There's some fine sediment in the bowl, and there are some small specks floating around here, but not enough to gum up this carburetor. So we're going to set that to the side. We're going to pull our main jet and our pilot jet. Now, I am not an expert at carburetors. I get by. So I'm going to tell you my get by way of doing things. But by no means am I an expert when it comes to this. Because this bike was running literally 2 days ago, and I personally wrote it, this is not his story here, I know this carburetor can't be very bad. So my hunch, you've got two circuits here that we're going to address today. And what we're going to find, you have an idle circuit, which is the smaller jet here, and then you have your run jet. This is your main or your primary, depending on who you're talking to. They make a good tool. They make a jet tool for this. This is a screwdriver. It's a flathead screwdriver. Be sure and get one that fits snugly into the jet. Don't go in here with a real small one, or you will break off the ears and then you will be in a world of hurt. So you have an idle jet, which is this one, and this is probably, you can think of it as your start jet. If your bike won't start, this is probably going to be the problem. It's the smallest of the two openings. And because it's the smallest, it's generally the first one to get plugged up with dirt. Again, it's the smallest opening, so a piece of trash is going to get stuck here. And when we say trash, we're talking about a little piece of dirt, a little rock, a little bit of sand, a little bit of rust flakes. When people say, "Oh, you got trash in the carburetor," that's what they're referring to. It's just a term. Now, what I have here is a torch tip cleaner. I've taken it and I've kind of filed it down a little bit, and I just keep it for this particular reason. It's pretty tough. I haven't even looked through it yet. Well, yep. So here we go. So what I do is, some people argue that running a file inside a bronze jet is going to waller it out or going to upsize it. And those people that say that are correct. But I am not sitting here filing this thing. I am plunging it through there once or twice. This is just a piece of wire. It is no longer, you see I'm going through here sideways also, okay? It's a piece of wire. There's nothing on here abrasive. I have actually, in a pinch, I kid you not, telephone wire actually works really good for this. It's not quite as strong as a file, but if you've got a piece of telephone cable, all right, so see, I've had to work it all the way through, and now we know that that jet is clean, and it was not clean when we started. All right, I'm gonna hold this up to the camera. I don't know if you'll be able to see through it all the way or not, but you should be able to take this, hold it up to the light, and see all the way through it. And if you can't, then you need to go back and clean it again. You should be able to blow through it and see through it. That also applies to the little holes on the side, but I just know that's what it's supposed to do. So that's the idle jet, and because this bike would not start, I would bet that this is the problem here, that idle jet was plugged up, and that's all that's wrong with this bike. Now I'm gonna pull this main out because we're here. It's one of those jobs while you're here, you might as well look at it. I'll blow on it first. You can see all the way through that one easily. You can see how much bigger that one is compared to the other one. It has little holes on the side of it too. You're gonna wanna clean those out. Just again, because you're here, there's no point in only doing half of this job and then putting it all back together. And it's not a hard job. Really, in all sincerity, getting the air box out is probably the hardest part of doing this. Now again, this is not a rebuild. We're just cleaning this carburetor. We're cleaning the jets. That's all we're doing. I have seen a jet fall out of a carburetor one time and be laying in the bowl. So now we're back over here to the bike. We got our carburetor. We're just really gonna just repeat the steps of taking it apart. We're gonna put our cable back on our choke. We're gonna bring it around. You can, and I'll go ahead and tell you, it is a little easier to get to up here than it is down there. I'm gonna go ahead and set some tension on this cable. As a general rule, just make the cable flush, the casing of the cable flush with the bottom of this little arm that keeps tension on it. 10mm nuts that fit on 2 studs that come off the back of the engine. When you put this slide back in, that's the opening that you put your cable into. This other side over here actually has a little ramp. And what that is when you turn the fast idle screw, the screw screws into this ramp, and that ramp causes the slide to go up. As the screw goes in, the slide goes up. As the screw comes out, the slide goes down. So you want to make sure that that is 90 degrees or 3 o'clock. If you do that, it should drop right in, just like that, the first time. Now, I'm going to back up. See how the slide sits right here? If your slide stops flush like that, you do not have it in line. You do not have it in line with the screw on the other side. That slide should slide all the way down here with 0 resistance at all, okay? If you're fighting to get your cap on, if you're pushing the spring and the spring's fighting you as you try to put the cap on, then you do not have the slide set in properly. Now the next thing you want to listen, at this point, I'm going to operate just the slide on the throttle here. I can feel the slide coming up and down, and I can feel it bottom out when it hits the bottom of the carburetor. Go up and come all the way down. You want to make sure that that slide goes all the way down. That's what's going to prevent a runaway. See here? I've just got the fuel line hooked up. We got our filter, a new filter in place. We're going to turn the fuel on. It's a neat little bike. It really, really is. It's special in its own way. It's got some really neat features. Just know though, if you deal in a lot of different 3-wheelers, the plastic makeup changes throughout the years. I can tell you that the older plastics, the 85s and up, the plastic seems to be hard or dense plastic, whereas the earlier bikes, the plastic is more of a nylon base. It has a lot of flex and a lot of give to it. The plastic starts getting harder and more rigid. And in one of the areas that this on this particular bike is this particular neck right here. It just does not want to flex. It's very stiff. It's very hard. And because of that, I don't want to break it out of this housing. Like I said, this bike is really 2 years only, and I don't want to have to replace parts for it. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to heat this area up to where it will flex and bend where I want it to bend, hopefully without making too big of a mess. We just want to make it a little more pliable. We're not trying to melt it or reshape it really. We just kind of want it to bend to our wheel. It's still pretty warm. Insert a screwdriver. You got one long enough you can hook up from the inside, from the airbox side. I don't know if you caught that on camera or not. That's actually kind of a handy little trick to get that upward lift on your tubing. Reach in from here with a screwdriver or pry bar or something like that. When you put your screws back together and things, take note. Honda actually really did some really cool things. If you look at the frame on a Big Red, there's a little gap right here where the backbone splits. And at first glance, you would think that they missed a spot when they were welding it up. But that's not what that's for. And I found this out by just chance. If you take the rocker valve cover off the intake, that hole lines up perfectly with the rocker stud to make adjustments for your valves. It just, I mean, who would have thought to do that? I guess somebody, you know, was smarter than me. They said, we're going to have to access that one of these days. And so they just left that little gap there. Okay, so we got our airbox back in. This is an uni filter. Now, this bike, and this is another little tip here for you. I like the uni filters. And one of the reasons I like the uni filters is because they come with this wire cartridge on the inside. I'll call it a cartridge. I don't know what you want to call it. Your other brands don't. Here's the reason I like that. This bike had a element or a cartridge that came with it, and it's gone. Now I could go on eBay and I could probably try to track one down, but the actual element inside this filter works perfectly. If it's right inside the neck of the intake here, I can get my hand in the right spot. Fits perfect, and then you slide the filter up, over, capturing both, and when you tighten it down, it will grab the housing, and that will squeeze it onto the element, onto that cartridge that I was just telling you. Now, and that will apply to your Big Reds, your 200Ss, all of your 200cc bikes. So that's a benefit that you're getting when you buy an uni filter. And I know they're not the cheapest filter out there. But if you've lost your element, or someone else has lost your element of your bike, that element's probably $20 online. You can buy a brand new uni filter for anywhere from $20 to $30 and have that element, have that cartridge with it. And then, on the next time you put a filter on it, you'll already have an element. So, just a little tip, a little trick. It works. I don't think it was intended to do that, but it does, and so I'm thankful for it. Second generation 125M. Very, very neat little bike. It's small, it's compact. You could throw it in the back of your truck, no problem. It's got plenty of power. You see it'll pull a little wheelie, and it'll scoot. Top speed on this, probably, just guessing, I would probably say around 30. As always, thank you so much. We are almost at 4,000 subscribers. Thank you for watching. I appreciate it. I set a goal. I'm a goal-oriented person. I like to set goals and try to obtain them. So here's my goal for 2022. I'll share it with you. I would like to hit 10,000 subscribers by December 31st, 2022. That's my goal. That's my goal for the year. So my job is to give enough content to warrant those subscribers. And so I'm going to try to do my part. And if you'd be so kind to share, like, and tell your friends, I would greatly appreciate it. Y'all take care. Have a great day. Bye.